Ok, aquí estamos. Lección 7.4. This is the last PowerPoint, last video I'll record for this class. So a little bit nostalgic. Here we're going to talk about verbs like gustar. We talked about gustar way back at the beginning of the semester in chapter 2. That gustar, we use it in English to say I like something, but that really it's saying the thing is pleasing to me. Now that you've learned about indirect objects, you probably understand this a little bit better. You say, me gusta la Coca-Cola. We're not saying I like it. We're saying the Coca-Cola, that's the subject of the sentence, is pleasing. And the me in me gusta is because I am the indirect object. So hopefully some little wheels are turning in your heads that now it's starting to make sense. But there are other verbs, not just gustar, that work like that. So some things to remember, a reminder as we go into this, is that the thing that is doing the pleasing is the subject of the sentence, and the person or persons being pleased become the indirect object. If there's only one thing that's pleasing, then that's a third person singular thing. If there are multiple things that are doing the pleasing, that's a third person plural thing. So in the examples, me gusta ese shampoo. That shampoo is pleasing to me. I am the indirect object. ¿Te gustaron las clases? Las clases are the classes, third person plural. There's more than one of them. So then the verb gets conjugated in the third person plural form, in this case, in the preterite. So were the classes pleasing to you, to te? So just the things to remember that typically these verbs are going to be used in third person singular or plural, and that the indirect object can be all of the six. It can be me, te, le, nos, os, or les. So we can all be the ones being pleased or being liked by these things. So let's look at a couple of the way this happens. Again, just remember that it's different. This is a good example of how when we translate languages, we translate concepts. You've already seen that. You can't translate word for word and get a meaning. You're translating the idea. So the idea of me gusta ese shampoo, the idea in English is that I like this shampoo. So we don't translate word by word, and that it requires an indirect object to be the person that is being pleased by this thing or by this action. Okay, and this one below, just to help you figure that out, me gusta este shampoo. So me is the indirect object pronoun, gusta is the verb, and ese shampoo or shampoo is a subject. In English, it's backwards. I like that shampoo. I am the subject, verb is like, and that shampoo is a direct object. So again, we're translating concepts. We talked about with indirect objects, you ask yourself, who is receiving the action of that verb, right? So in this case, it'd be like, to whom is the shampoo pleasing? And it would be me. So I am the indirect object. And that's how we would know which pronoun to put there. All right, so some other verbs that are like that. Let's just go through these 8. Aburrir, double R in the middle. Aburrir means to bore or to be boring to something. So esta clase me aburre. You would never say that about Spanish 101, obviously, right? But some classes might be boring. So the verb is aburrir, and whatever it is that is boring is going to be the subject, whether it's a third person singular or plural, and then whoever is being bored by that thing is the indirect object. Encantar. I don't think I've ever heard anybody really, except in Disney movies, use the word enchant or enchanted very often in English, but in Spanish it's very, very common. It's like a step above gustar. Like, I like it so very, very much. You hear that a lot. Ay, me encanta tu camisa. Ay, me encanta esta película. I love this movie. Amar, which means to love, is more like a romantic love. So encantar is probably about as close as you can get to loving an object, a thing or an object or an action. You can say me encanta esquiar. You can say me gusta esquiar, but if you say me encanta esquiar, it means I'm on those slopes opening day and I'm skiing just as much as I can. I really, really like that. I love it. So aburrir, to bore, and you already learned aburrido. We talked about adjectives. Encantar, to enchant, or to like very, very much. Faltar. Faltar means to lack. And it means to lack is in something that is left, something that's remaining. Like en este semestre, solo nos faltan 3 semanas, right? In this semester, 3 weeks are lacking us. So there are 3 weeks to go, basically, what you're saying, pero faltan 3 semanas. Fascinar looks just like what it is, fascinate, so like something a lot. And really, fascinar, it implies a little bit more of an intellectual curiosity, right? That fascinates me. That's a fascinating topic. Importar looks just like it is, to import or to be important to. And you hear that a lot, me importa la nota en esta clase, or no me importan las clases de ciencia. So they do import, or they are important to me, or they do matter to me, or they don't. Interesar, to be interesting, to interest you. So, no me interesa la historia. History doesn't interest me. No me interesa la economía, la política. Those things don't interest me. And again, if it's singular thing, then interesa. If it's a plural thing, interesan. Molestar. So just an alert on this one. Molestar in Spanish is a completely acceptable verb. It just means to be bothered by. So it does not have any kind of an abusive context like it would in, like it looks like it would in English. So to bother or to annoy. Me molesta el ruido, the noise. Me molesta el ruido. Me molesta tener mucha tarea. I'm having a lot of homework bothers me, annoys me. Quedar is 2 things. Quedar can be to be left over, or also to fit with clothes. Okay. If you say, te queda bien esta camisa, you're telling somebody that shirt looks good on you. It fits you. It works for you, right? So again, la camisa or esta camisa is a subject. You're talking to your friend and tú. So te queda bien esta camisa. Or me queda bien esta ropa. Do these clothes look good on me? And again, the subject is the thing that's doing the fitting. And then the indirect object is the person to whom you're speaking. So 8 verbs there that work like gustar. Aburrir, encantar, faltar, fascinar, importar, interesar, molestar, y quedar. All right, so just to review, faltar shows what's lacking or missing. You could say, me faltan $10 para el viaje a México. I'm lacking still $10 for my trip. That's something that I'm missing, I'm lacking. Me falta un bolígrafo, me falta una pluma. I don't have a pen, I'm missing a pen. And then quedar, nos quedan 3 pesos. We're broke. No tenemos dinero, solo nos quedan 3 pesos. We don't have any money left. All we have left are 3 pesitos, right? So you're talking about something that is remaining or being left. And when it talks about clothes or even like haircuts, we talk about being a good fit or looking good on somebody. All right, quedar means to fit, to be, to tell something, how something looks on somebody else. Estos zapatos me quedan bien. So zapatos is plural. So quedan is the verb. Zapatos are the subject. So quedan gets conjugated, third person plural. And then me, to me, are in the indirect object. So estos zapatos me quedan bien. Esa camisa te queda muy bien. Camisa singular, queda singular, and te because you are the indirect object. So quedar can also mean to fit or to look good on somebody. All right, just to review them, the most commonly used verb forms with gustar in these verbs are the third person, singular and plural. We don't really use them to talk, like you don't tell a person, you fascinate me or you interest me. It's used mostly with things and concepts. Sometimes with people, there's a little bit of a different connotation that is not very common in Spanish, let's just say. So when the object or person being liked is singular, the singular form, gusta, encanta, interesa, importa, fascina, all the singular form is used. When it's 2 or more objects that are doing the liking, right, then gustar becomes gustan, or encantan, interesan, importan, fascinan, etc. And remember, they can be used in all the different tenses you've learned. And so we talk about it in the singular tense because we learned this early on, and that's the only tense that you knew. Where now you know present progressive, you know how to put things in the preterite form. So the verb can get used in all the tenses. Just remember that it's still going to be used mostly in third person, either singular or plural. And that indirect object always reflects the person that is being pleased or interested or enchanted or imported or fascinated, etc. Okay, just one other thing is that oftentimes the things that we like or that's fascinating or that's important is an action. And in that case, we've talked before about when you have two verbs together in the same phrase, that second verb stays in the infinitive form, and that's the case. To express what someone likes or does not like to do, use the appropriate verb gustar, fascinar, interesar, etc., followed by the infinitive form. So don't conjugate that verb the second time. Really what you're saying is, in the example, nos molesta comer a las 9, it bothers us to eat at 9 o'clock, or eating at 9 o'clock. So the subject of that verb is comer. So to eat bothers us, okay? So it stays in infinitive because it's this general concept of the verb. It's a singular. It's always going to be a singular, even in the second example when it's two verbs together. And I'll explain that to you. Look at the example, les encanta bailar y cantar en las fiestas. It's still encanta. It's still singular, even though you have two verbs. Because now what you're saying is singing and dancing. If you had it in English, singing and dancing is fun, because you're saying this whole combined action of singing and dancing, it's one event. It's a singular event. This whole concept of singing and dancing is taking place as one event. So that is fun, or they love that in their parties. So nos molesta comer a las 9. Les encanta bailar y cantar. Again, as if you could put parentheses around that, like a math expression, right? So that's all one entity. Les encanta what? Bailar y cantar en las fiestas. To whom? They, les. So that's where you get your indirect object from. All right, wrapping it up, just remember that the construction, the personal plus a pronoun is used to clarify who is that person that's being pleased or bored or fascinated or imported. And that's a personal And we talked about way back in personal that it's used for people, it's used for groups, and it's used for pets that are treated like animals. So in this example, a los turistas les gustó mucho Machu Picchu. So los turistas, the tourists, represents a group of people. So it's got to have the personal in front of it. And that shows that they are the indirect object that's being gustarred by Machu Picchu. So the indirect object is los turistas. The indirect object pronoun for that is les, because that's third person, plural. The verb is gustar, but the subject is Machu Picchu, which is a third person singular thing. So the verb gets conjugated in a third person singular form. So a los turistas, les is the indirect object pronoun that goes with that. Gustó mucho Machu Picchu. The tourists like Machu Picchu a lot. Second sentence, a ti te gusta cenar en casa. One phrase. But a mí me aburre. That sounds like a Friday night conversation between my wife and me. A ti te gusta cenar en casa. So eating in house, eating at home is pleasing to you. New phrase, but to me, it bores me. Now notice that we don't have to repeat cenar, just like you would in English, but that's still the subject of that phrase. Eating at home bores me. So it's an implied subject of that second phrase. So a los turistas les gustó mucho Machu Picchu. A ti te gusta cenar en casa, pero a mí me aburre. And remember that when you have, we often will clarify, right, with those a los turistas equals les. When it's te and me, you don't need to do that because there's nobody else that could be talking about. So you could just say te gusta cenar en casa, pero me aburre, and that's completely fine. When they do that, we're usually emphasizing, hey, you may like to eat at home, but it bores me. You're emphasizing the you part and the me part, that contrast between the two things. So that's used to emphasize there in those parts. Okay, one thing that I've seen as I've been correcting quizzes the last week or so is me, when it comes after has an accent on it. And that's because now it means me, whereas am I without an accent means my. I know, sorry, that's confusing. If you're listening to that, I'm very, very sorry. So when it's a mí me gusta, that me, am I, has to have an accent on the I. And again, it's not even really a spelling wrong. It's a spelling problem. It's the wrong word because me without an accent means my. So just watch those things. So here are three questions, three sentences. Just take a second and using the verb that's in parentheses, how would you form these sentences? So if you want to write it down or just think through it, I'll show you the answers here in just a second. So pause and give yourself a second to write or to think through and then come back and we'll look at them. All right. I never know how long to wait, so I assumed you paused if you wanted to. Número uno, it's important for me to study. So the subject of that verb, of that sentence is to study. To study imports or matters to me. Where that's so, we would have a mí, which is optional. Me importa estudiar. Estudiar is our subject. It's singular because it's an infinitive. So importa stays in third person singular. And the indirect object is me. The a mí is optional. If you're going to put a mí, it has an accent on the I. Número dos, we like very much to dance and listen to music. Now remember that encantar, that's what it means, is we like very much, or it's very much pleasing to us. So you could add mucho here. You don't need to because we're saying really that's the definition of the verb encantar. So it's we, right? So that's the indirect object. So dance and listen to music is our subject. That whole concept is a singular idea. Dance and listen to music is something we're doing at the same time. That's singular. And we have our verb encantar, so it's going to be conjugated in that form. So a nosotros, which is optional, nos encanta bailar y escuchar música. Número tres, Julia is interested in sports. So sports is going to be los deportes, and that's a plural concept. So we're going to conjugate interesar in that third person plural form. And then Julia is the indirect object. And what indirect object pronoun will go with that? She's a third person singular person, so it would be le. So we have our sentence. A Julia le interesan los deportes. All right. Okay, guys. Well, now you've added again to your arsenal many, many more words, and you'll understand how to conjugate them and how to make them work, that they reflect the a different subject and that the person that is being pleased or liked or mattered to or interested is the indirect object of that sentence. So go through it, do the exercises in the book, and let me know what questions you have. All right. Hasta. Gracias. Bye.